Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto joined anonymous group on his way back home from training part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. We have a mission in the Hidden Stone Village, said Kisame. We're leaving immediately then, ordered Itachi. Naruto nodded and instantly adopted a serious attitude. They packed up and left. Kisame estimated the trip to take 3 days. The first day was traveled mostly in silence, except Itachi and Kisame who seemed to be discussing something. Even though Naruto burned with curiosity about his first mission, he decided it better not to ask. He knew that Itachi would fill him in eventually. Patience is something Naruto had to work hard to learn. While he did learn to be reserved, calm, cold and calculating from Itachi and Kisame, patience was different. To sit quietly for hours on end in ambush or espionage was not something Naruto had been very good at. Itachi and Kisame were the middle of two extremes. They wouldn't mind to sit in ambush, but they wouldn't do it for very long. If it wasn't working they would rather go find the enemy and openly attack them. Reiko was the type of person that didn't like to wait at all. He wouldn't wait to see what his opponent had in store for him. Better to strike first and kill your opponent before he can do anything to you, he would say. But never rush in blindly, and never show off anything high level. Limitations and regulations, they seem to always follow you around, no such thing as freedom. That was one of the reasons Naruto ultimately developed his own fighting style, to not take orders from anyone. Advice is fine, but orders reminded him too much of Konoha. Mia, she was the exact opposite of Reiko. She could sit in ambush for days. Annoyed the hell out of Naruto. But did ultimately teach him to be patient. Actually it was either that or she would beat him up. It's really your choice, you know. Either you exert self-control or I force you to exert self-control. However, the force part was more like punishment, and she always seemed to know exactly how and when to exact revenge. Paralysis jutsus at the most uncomfortable moments, like paralyzing his jaw muscles right before dinner. Sadistic bitch was a common nickname Naruto used in the beginning. She wouldn't even get the slightest bit angry and would sometimes smile and thank him for the compliment. Naruto later found out that she was kind of like Itachi, in the sense that right before leaving she left the village a little present. She effectively poisoned their water supply, not to kill them, no, rather to make sure every single person stayed in bed for at least 2 weeks. Of course the ones with the weaker immune system would die, but hey, survival of the fittest, right? Anyway, she justified it saying that she needed a little head start. Unlike all his other teachers, Mia didn't start easy on him. She instantly jumped into advanced training. So training sessions such as ambushing Anbu and or Hunter Nin was a common practice for her, and she would always have Naruto do the fighting alone. She would help him of course if he was going to die, but otherwise it seemed like she could care less. Nowadays Naruto thanks her for that, since missing Nin can't be taught to rely on teammates. She really prepared him for the harsh reality of the real world. It seemed, to Naruto, that most of the members of the Akatsuki were on good terms with each other. The motto seemed to be, considerate with friends, ruthless with enemies. Naruto didn't mind that at all. He considered Itachi, Kisame, Reiko, and Mia to be friends, and most everyone else would then be an enemy. He had long ago forgotten about his former comrades and so-called friends from the Leaf. He saw one of them once. Iruka-sensei was what he used to call him. It was in a small town in the waterfall country. Naruto was on a one-day vacation and was wandering about the business district aimlessly. He saw him in a bar arguing with the bartender about something. There was a team of genin waiting impatiently outside, muttering something about sensei taking too long. Naruto's curiosity piqued. He hadn't seen anyone from his past since he left and wondered if maybe they were gathering info about him. He followed him for a little while, hoping to hear about what's happened since he left. Instinctively, he started making mental notes about each person in the group, assessing their strengths and weaknesses. He wanted to stop himself, but realized that if they were searching for him, that this would be valuable information. What would he do if that was the case? Well, that one's easy. He'd kill them. Sorry, sensei. Naruto thought in a cold tone, but I can't have anyone knowing anything about me. Other than that, he didn't have any run-ins with people from the past. Sure, there were the occasional leaf Anbu and/or hunter nin that he would kill as practice, but that was so routine he didn't even flinch. He remembered that after one of their training sessions, Itachi asked him from which village the ninjas were from, and after thinking for a little while, Naruto found that he couldn't come up with an answer. He had just killed them and disposed of the bodies like routine work. Itachi didn't reply to that in any way. It was his usual open your eyes to something and then leave you to figure out what it all means by yourself. On one hand, it scared Naruto that he could just kill people so easily. But on the other hand, Naruto figured that as long as they weren't important to him, it didn't really matter. Suddenly, Itachi's voice snapped Naruto out of his reminiscing. We're going to camp here for the night. Night already, huh? Thought Naruto. That's just how his mind worked. Replacement. If you can't think of one thing, then make yourself think of something else. A sort of mind kawarimi no jutsu, if you will. Naruto chuckled slightly. As usual, dinner, as any other meal, was eaten in silence. This was a practice they observed because they found that ambushes usually came when you were peacefully eating and seemingly unaware of the surrounding world. After dinner, they were finally able to discuss the import business. Itachi's voice broke the silence. Naruto, it's time you knew what this mission consists of. Naruto turned his head and listened intently. First of all, we have to sneak into the hidden stone, which shouldn't be too difficult. Second, we have to locate the Kutoji estate, and get in there without alerting the stone Anbu. Third, the actual orders, we have to kill the Kutoji clan members, said Itachi in a cold tone. There's something special about this clan, isn't there? Asked Naruto. Yes, they are of an advanced bloodline, replied Itachi. Naruto's eyebrow lifted slightly. What kind of advanced bloodline? Asked Naruto cautiously. They have the ability to create golems out of stone, dirt, mud, anything that is part of the earth, said Kisame. Don't worry, Naruto, said Itachi, all that's left of this clan is just a father and son. You will fight with the kid and Kisame, and I will fight the head of the clan. Naruto nodded in agreement, not that he could change their decision even if he had disagreed. Well, this would certainly prove to be an interesting battle, and he had 2 days to plan for it. The golems would most likely be like his chakra-reinforced cage bushin. I wonder how agile they will be. Since that would ultimately determine who he goes for first, the golems are the real enemy. A few things are already certain about the golems. Lightning is no good, poison is no good, wind is worth a try, water would probably be good, earth fighting earth doesn't seem productive, and fire is also worth a try. Now for the boy. If he has other things do his biting, then he might be weak in taijutsu, ninjutsu we'll just have to see, and same for genjutsu. That's the thing about chakra using techniques, you can't tell how good a person is with them until you either observe them fighting or fight them yourself. Since the former was definitely out, Naruto would have to find out the hard way. Perhaps take a few hits, make himself look weak, all the while working on a counterattack. 2 days later, they stood in front of large metal gates with the stone symbol carved into them. This was it, the point of no return. Once inside, they would have to complete the mission. However, the trio was unfazed. They simply kept walking forward with absolute confidence. Itachi activated his Mangekyo Sharingan and the guard didn't even question them. Part 1. Complete, thought Naruto, even though he knew that he didn't do anything. Finding the Kutoji clan residence was no problem, they seemed to be well known in the stone. Getting in was done in much the same way, just a lot more cautiously, and also Itachi made sure to disable the guards, the bodies of which were quickly hidden. Part 2. Complete, thought Naruto. Now comes the hard part, Part 3. They are on the far side of the compound, whispered Naruto, training most likely. Heightened senses made search and destroy missions, or training sessions as it was for Naruto, so easy. His senses confirmed the information. There were only 2 people training and the guards didn't seem to be numerous or paying too much attention. We best attack while they are training, said Itachi in a low voice. We can't take chances on other ninjas showing up. Kisame and Naruto nodded in agreement and moved toward their enemies. They soon saw 2 figures. One was resting against a tree and the other was doing some sort of earth jutsu. Based on chakra levels, the latter is the kid, thought Naruto. The boy suddenly stopped his jutsu halfway through to look at the intruders, diverting his father's attention to the approaching trio. The man got up and yelled out, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" "Our identities do not concern you," calmly replied Itachi, "and we are here for your heads." The boy visibly stiffened for a second, then became relaxed once again. However, this small change did not go unnoticed by Naruto. "So a little scared of death now, aren't we?" "You are not our enemies," replied the man once again. "Leave now or we will be forced to fight you." "Then you shall have to fight us," said Itachi coldly. As Itachi and Kisame prepared to battle, Naruto beckoned to the boy that he was going to fight him one-on-one. The boy proudly accepted Naruto's challenge and they both jumped a ways to the side to have more room to battle. Let's start off simple, thought Naruto. He then gathered the required chakra and made 2 Kage Bushin appear on either side of the stone nin. Not normal Kage Bushin, but chakra reinforced Kage Bushin. Naruto always makes this special kind nowadays since the normal kind are just worthless in a real battle. The boy was shocked that Naruto was able to perform ninjutsu without the use of seals. Naruto smirked at the stone nin's reaction. Training pays off, even if I can only do this with simple jutsus. The clones attacked the stone nin using only taijutsu, one going for the legs, the other for the torso and head. The stone nin was able to dodge the clones' attacks and after gaining some distance did several hand seals and slammed his palms into the ground. Secret jutsu, clay golem. Naruto then saw 3 mounds of earth rise up and form themselves into the shape of a person. So this is what they look like, mused Naruto. Now to test them. He instantly had his Kage Bushins attack the golems. While the golems certainly lacked in speed and couldn't always block or dodge his clones' attacks, they sure packed a punch. Both of his special Kage Bushins were destroyed in just 3 or 4 hits. Without a moment of hesitation, the stone nin had his golems attacking the real Naruto. Naruto parried and dodged the attacks easily and noted that the golems were fighting on a chunin level. Just when he was about to counterattack, Naruto felt some chakra below him. Shit, he's going to attack me with ninjutsu while I'm distracted fighting his golems with taijutsu, then I have to get serious. Naruto jumped up right before the ground under him exploded. He pushed himself off the heads of one of the golems, sending it into the others, slowing them down a little bit. While in midair, Naruto already started doing the necessary hand seals for his jutsu. He completed the hand seals several seconds after landing. "Sweeten. Water explosion no jutsu," said Naruto in a faint voice. Before the golems could react, they were swallowed up by the water and carried away about 50 feet before being slammed into a wall. The water had torn apart the clay and hence rendered the golems useless. Naruto's attention was now switched to the stone nin and Naruto smirked at the frown on his face. The stone nin then started doing the same hand seals as he had done a little while ago. Naruto knew better than to let him finish and instantly charged at him whispering, "Split." From the stone nin's perspective there was only one Naruto charging at him, but in reality the stone nin was just seeing the clone and the real Naruto was stealthily making his way behind his opponent. Split copy cage bushin, split, the clone comes out of the user's body. Basically imagine a soul leaving a body, same type of image except it's not the soul but a clone. If the clone charges forward it looks like the real person is charging forward, if any other direction most people would write it off as genjutsu. Both being terrible mistakes in battle. Naruto's clone charged forward, but right in front of the stone nin he suddenly disappeared and reappeared behind him and made to punch him in the back of the head. The stone nin countered via kawarimi replacing himself with a rock. The stone nin smirked. Doden. Spike. Suddenly the ground under the clone spiked up into a spear and sliced the clone's left leg. Doden. Land bind. The earth crawled up the clone's legs up to about his knees and solidified. Thinking that victory was his, the stone nin relaxed and calmly walked over to the clone. Just as the stone nin raised his kunai to slit the clone's throat, he felt a presence behind him and cold metal against his own throat. "You underestimated me," said Naruto in a cold tone, "and you assumed too much." The stone nin shifted uncomfortably and tried to break from Naruto's hold, but was unsuccessful. "Now I can assume a fact." Naruto pulled his katana away slightly, but then returned it with full force and chopped out the stone nin's head. As the body fell to the ground lifeless he added, "That you're dead." Naruto wiped his bloody katana and put it back in its sheath that hung behind his head. Then looked over and saw that Itachi and Kisame seemed to be winning and sighed contently. "Hey kid, take that scroll your enemy has," suddenly said the Kyuubi, making Naruto flinch in surprise. Naruto took the scroll and looked at it. Doden Jutsu Mastery was written on the cover. "It's probably something to do with their blood limit," thought Naruto. "Maybe or maybe not," calmly replied the Kyuubi, then noticing the hesitation in Naruto's mind added, "Just take it. If it is worthless you can practice one of your fire jutsus on it. The fire jutsus I need practice with are all a bit too big for a scroll. Get off your high chair. You don't know everything there is in the world," growled the Kyuubi. Fine, grumbled Naruto. Although it was true that Naruto wasn't that good with earth jutsus. He knew some, but he didn't use them very often, mostly because he said that by the time you put your palms on the ground your enemy could have already gained a better position. Even though Itachi didn't share his point of view, he didn't bother pursuing him with further training for two reasons. 1. Naruto, being as stubborn as he is, wouldn't back off his point. 2. Naruto was already proficient in Raiden, Suiden and Kaden. So Doden wasn't really necessary. Naruto pocketed the scroll, grabbed his enemy's head and went to meet up with Itachi and Kisame, who he saw had now completed their battle. Itachi took a look at Naruto, saw the head he was carrying and nodded in approval. Kisame threw Naruto a bag to put the head in. "Let's get out of here," said Kisame, "we are unwelcome." With that the three vanished running towards the nearest exit. Naruto noticed that getting out always seemed to be more bothersome than getting in. They always fight to hold you in, but are much more mellow when it comes to holding you out. Naruto pondered this while slitting a guard's throat and jumping over the wall to disappear into the surrounding forest. Kisame taught Naruto how to use a katana. Several days later, they appeared before the Akatsuki Council and reported their mission complete. The three leaders acknowledged this and for the first time in 3.5 years actually introduced themselves to Naruto. Roto was the leader of the Akatsuki. It seemed that he started it with the help of Kane, who was second in command. Hayako was the first member and resided on the council because he didn't have any missions. Roto also informed them of the death of one of the teams of the Akatsuki. Roto did mention the names, but since they didn't mean anything to Naruto he simply forgot them. This, combined with the fact that Naruto was now ready, is why they decided to split up the trio. Itachi and Kisame would go back to being a two-man team and Naruto would join up with Reiko. Roto then dismissed Naruto and bade him to make himself comfortable here until Reiko arrived from his mission. Itachi and Kisame were no doubt given another mission since Naruto didn't see them later that night. Reiko arrived in a few days and they were given another mission for which they set out immediately. Year and a half later, Naruto was relaxing on the couch of his room at the Akatsuki headquarters after getting back from a mission. A lot has happened during the last year and a half. He did several missions with Reiko for the next 6 months. Some were assassination missions, others were to steal something or other, usually scrolls. It was after returning from one of these missions, he learned that Kisame was killed during his previous mission. The teams were rearranged once again and Naruto was back with Itachi as a teammate. Naruto mourned the loss of one of his dear friends, but did not let it get in the way of his job. He asked Itachi for the details many times, but Itachi either turned him down or managed to change the subject. Naruto finally gave up, hoping that one day Itachi would tell him, but until Naruto would give him his space. More missions followed, although the missions didn't seem to have any sort of logic to them. It looked as if the Akatsuki was using random hit-and-run tactics. This of course did not sit well with the members at all. Considering all of the Akatsuki members were Class S missing nin who could just as easily be doing random hit-and-runs on their own and get a lot more out of it. Sure, they were paid, but it seemed that it wasn't nearly enough. Half of the stuff they were stealing was easily worth 3 times as much on the black market. Tensions were high, yet the organization seemed to hold together. Naruto didn't care about this much, knowing that if there was a split he would follow Itachi. What was the Akatsuki for Naruto? Well, what began as a way to rebel against Konoha was now nothing more than a shell that told him who to kill or what to steal. He had to admit he didn't like being ordered about by a bunch of strangers. Why did he stay there? The only reason he could find was his big brother. Naruto respected, trusted and looked up to Itachi. Itachi knew all this of course, but he wasn't a person to openly show affection. Itachi also sometimes wondered whether Naruto could beat him or not. Neither would challenge each other to a real fight though, sparring was fine, but neither wanted to fight to the death. For Naruto because Itachi Oni-chan was like the family he never had, and for Itachi because Naruto was also like family, but in a different way. Naruto understood him. Naruto understood why he did what he did. Naruto understood his relationship with Sasuke a lot better than Sasuke did himself. Sasuke no baka, chuckled Naruto. Someday maybe Naruto would beat it into Sasuke, but for now he was content with the knowledge that the so-called genius couldn't even figure out his own family relations. Just then Itachi walked in with a scroll in his hand and slammed the door to bring Naruto back to the real world. Naruto glanced at Itachi. So, new mission. Yeah, this one's interesting, said Itachi in an amused voice. Really? So what are we doing? Asked Naruto in a passive tone. It's more like what you are doing. Itachi continued in the same voice. Great guessing games again. Itachi just loves this stuff. He has information which I have no way of knowing and then teases me with it. What do you mean? Asked Naruto in a half-bored tone. It's a solo mission for you, replied Itachi with a slight smile. Naruto raised his eyebrows slightly. Since when does the Akatsuki send ME on solo missions? Hell, since when does it send anyone on solo missions? Where? Asked Naruto. A very interesting place, replied Itachi. Amuse me, said Naruto in a very bored, but slightly frustrated tone. Itachi smiled and said the one word that almost made Naruto fall off the couch, Konoha. Solitary figure stood outside the wooden gates of Konoha. He was clad in almost all black. He had black travel shoes, black pants with multiple pockets and had a kunai holster on his right leg. He had a black jacket, the left sleeve of which was cut off at the elbow. His left arm was bandaged from the shoulder down to the wrist. He wore a black face mask. His dark blue eyes seemed to be somewhat violet and his dirty blonde hair had streaks of red going through it. If his hair didn't completely cover his ears, one would see that they were slightly pointed and had orange-red hair growing on top. He wore his forehead protector tied around the upper part of his left arm. The forehead protector had the Hidden Grass Village's symbol on it. Never thought I would come back here again, especially under these circumstances, mused Naruto. 5 years, and here I am. Last time my back was to the gates, this time my front. Naruto sighed deeply. My source of pain is right there in front of me. Images flashed in Naruto's head, the stares, the glares, the abuse, the mocking, the put-downs, and much more. Naruto shook his head to rid himself of all this shit. This isn't a revenge trip, can't let my feelings get in the way. Flashback. I'm going where? Yelled Naruto, jumping up to his feet. Konoha, calmly answered Itachi. Konoha. Yes, the Hidden Leaf Village in the Fire Country. I know what Konoha is, said Naruto in an annoyed voice. Then why do you keep asking? Said Itachi with a grin. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh, but seemed to calm down a bit. Konoha, huh? Naruto scoffed. Why are they sending me of all people? Asked Naruto in a disgusted tone. Then continued in a sarcastic tone. What, do they want me murder everybody? Itachi sharply breathed out of his nose and threw Naruto the scroll. Naruto opened it and quickly skimmed through it, his eyebrows rising more and more as he went through the scroll. Well, this is certainly interesting, said Naruto. Wouldn't it be better to go after the Junin exam is over? Asked Naruto in a contemplative tone. I mean, the security will be less, once the hype is over. Getting in, for foreigners, is easier this way, replied Itachi. True, all I have to do is take an identity from some other village, said Naruto, but wouldn't it be better if both of us go? I mean, it'd be less suspicious. Yes, it would be better, said Itachi. However, management said something about testing your power or showing off your power. If a single ninja can do this, then what about a group, right? Questioned Naruto rhetorically. This would be the Akatsuki's show of power. Interpret it as you will, that's what Roto said. In that case, I'll have to choose a village with an initially small amount of people. If you unroll the scroll a bit more, you will see that the list of contestants is already prepared, informed Itachi. Naruto did as instructed and saw the list, so management is being helpful for once. Either this one or that one. Wait a second, the grass will do perfectly, mused Naruto. They are only sending 2 people. I just hope at least one is a guy. I wouldn't want to fight while in no jutsu form, chuckled Naruto. Come to think of it, I have done that in a long while. Ah, the memories of youth. Naruto's smile quickly faded, the happy ones at least. The leaf always seems to have the most, said Naruto. The hosting village does usually have the most participants, explained Itachi. All right, off to find the grass participants and get a new identity, said Naruto, heading to the door. Good luck, Naruto, said Itachi with a small smile. I'll be on the outskirts of the village, throughout the exam, just in case. Thanks, take care of yourself, said Naruto and rushed out. You too, kiddo, you too, said Itachi in a caring voice. You've got the more dangerous assignment. Going back to your home village is always difficult for people like us, whispered Itachi in a distant voice. The list is as follows. Leaf 11, Sand 3, Stone 6, Snow 3, Mist 6, Waterfall 4, Rain 7, Grass 2, Cloud 5. End flashback. Well, here goes. Mission start, Naruto thought as he calmly walked toward the gates. As soon as he got close enough, a guard motioned him to stop and asked for his papers. Nazashi of the Grass, huh? Asked the guard, attending the Junin exam. Yes, answered Nazashi. From now on, until I say otherwise, I'll refer to Naruto by his fake identity. Aren't you coming a little late? I mean, the exam starts tomorrow, said the guard. I was delayed, answered Nazashi simply and then added, on a mission. Understandable, replies the guard still looking through the papers. Hey, it says here that there should be 2 ninjas from the hidden grass, questioned the guard. There should have been, but, she was killed on her previous mission, Nazashi managed to answer sadly. It's partly true, she was killed, by me, well both of the ninjas from the grass were, but we don't have to go into details. I see, said the guard, well your papers are in order, so you are clear to pass. You'll find the hotel about half a mile down this street. As easy as a walk in the park. Thank you, replied Nazashi politely and walked away. Back in Konoha, still can't get my mind around that concept. Focus, Nazashi, focus, you have a mission to do and it's not to get reacquainted with old comrades. Naruto found and checked into the hotel without a problem. The reserved room had 2 beds that Nazashi moved together to become one. He dropped off his bag and sat down on the bed. Should I scout now or do it later? Nazashi decided to get some needed rest, since the exam was the next day. As he unstrapped his kunai holster, he held it in his hand for a second and looked thoughtfully at it. Just when I got used to throwing knives, I'm forced to use kunai again. But I can't help it. Gotta blend in, and throwing knives don't commonly replace kunai. Nazashi held out an open hand with his fingers outstretched and tightened his muscles slightly. Watching amused as his fingernails lengthened into claws about 2 inches long. It's like holding 5 kunai, Nazashi smiled, and these are a lot more versatile. Another thing is that if I pour more chakra into them they'll grow even more. Nazashi sighed deeply. Of course, all this came at a price. Flashback. Naruto is standing in front of Kyuubi's cage, watching in shock and confusion as the Kyuubi's chakra leaks out of the gates and all over the walls and floor. Kyuubi, what the hell is going on? Yells Naruto. Kid, I don't have much time left, said the Kyuubi. Huh, what do you mean? Asked Naruto in confusion. I'm sure you have noticed that during the past week your chakra supply seemed to have been growing, said the Kyuubi, and Naruto nodded. Well, that is because I'm merging with you. Merging. What will be the effects of this and what's going to happen to you? Your body will probably have some physical changes and perhaps psychological. I'm not sure exactly what will happen. As for me, I'll be absorbed into you, and won't have to sit in this cage anymore, said the Kyuubi with a slight smirk. Will I still be able to talk to you? Not likely, kid, said the Kyuubi in a passive tone. Anyway, I called you here to give you a farewell gift. Really? What is it? Just take off your jacket and hold out your left arm, instructed the Kyuubi. Naruto did as he was told. The Kyuubi then sent some chakra toward Naruto, which then surrounded Naruto's left arm completely and swirled around for about a minute. During this time Naruto felt such great pain in his left arm that he had to drop to his knees and grit his teeth to keep from screaming. He had experienced this kind of pain before when Kyuubi modified his eyes to accommodate a special eye jutsu, so he knew that the rewards were well worth the price. Finally the pain stopped and the chakra was absorbed into Naruto's body instead of returning to the Kyuubi. See kid, my own chakra doesn't return back to me. Naruto looked at his left arm and saw burning red symbols painted on it. It's a tattoo, kid, the glowing red will soon cool down to black. Tattoo? What kind of tattoo? Asked Naruto looking at his arm from all different sides. A summoning contract tattoo, said the Kyuubi with an evil smile. The tattoo consisted of a fox's head drawn on the biceps. From the fox's chin a goatee in the form of a tail extended down from the inside of the elbow all the way down to the wrist and was in the form of a helix. The fox's head also had 8 whiskers, 4 on each side, which around Naruto's arm and the helix, in an intricate design to meet at one point in the middle of the wrist. This contract will be explained later when Naruto uses it. Naruto was sick for 3 days with a high temperature. he was constantly thrashing around in bed and had occasional chakra flames surrounded him that would destroy anything in their path. When he finally woke up, he found that he grew about a foot, his muscle mass almost doubled, his eyes, ears and hair had changed, his whisker marks were thicker, he had two very sharp fangs that could easily break bones, and of course he had the tattoo that the Kyuubi had given him. When asked about the tattoo by Itachi, Naruto simply said that it was a farewell present from the Kyuubi and didn't elaborate anymore. Psychologically, Naruto was mostly unchanged. He became a little bit more possessive of things that were his. He would only need about 3 to 4 hours of sleep, occasionally 5 if he were really exhausted. His chakra was seemingly unlimited, a Rasengan wouldn't even take away a percent. He never seemed to use up more than 25% of his chakra. He was now blessed with night vision and could interchange his own scent with that of a fox. The scary thing was that he was constantly figuring out new things that he could do. It seemed that after every battle, or at least after serious ones, there was something new that he learned. Not that Naruto minded at all. End flashback. That was 6 months ago. After staying with me for 18 years of my life, he left, thought Naruto sadly. He had gotten used to having the Kyuubi inside of him. When the Kyuubi merged with Naruto, it felt like Naruto had lost a part of his soul. That little voice in the back of his head that advised him. Naruto sighed. Never thought I'd miss that fox. Naruto shook his head slightly. Enough now, time to get to bed, so that I will have a good 5 or 6 hours to do some scouting. Next day, the Junin exam participants were set to meet by training area 44 at 9 a.m. Nazashi showed up at about 10 minutes to 9. Forest of Death, again. Please, not another scroll hunt, thought Nazashi. Well, may as well look around and pretend to show some curiosity in the other participants. Nazashi noticed that the villages weren't interacting with each other, but rather stayed in their own groups talking quietly amongst themselves. Nazashi looked around until he spotted the Konoha group and slowly made his way closer to them, hoping to hear some interesting details about what happened while he was away. As he got closer, he was able to make out who was taking the exam. He recognized everyone except 3 people. Sasuke, Ino, Shikamaru, Hinata, Kiba, Tenten, Lee, and Shino were the ones he recognized. The others he couldn't even tell which clans they were from, and he surely didn't know them. Well, that's not good. I need to know who is a liability. Sasuke looked much the same except a bit taller. His hairstyle was the exact same, and he also had short diagonal lines going across his cheek, but they were a lot less distinct than Itachi's. He wore the standard Chunin vest over a black shirt with the Uchiha fan on the sleeves, black shorts and standard blue sandals. He looks so much like Itachi, it's simply amazing. Ino had tight black shorts and dark red shirt over which she wore her Chunin vest. She had grown out her hair again, and it was in the same style as it was 5 years ago. She looks a lot more attractive, smirked Nazashi. Shikamaru. He looked exactly the same except he was taller and had a beard. My God, is he so lazy that he doesn't bother to change his appearance over 5 years? Hinata still wore the traditional Hyuga clothes, but had grown her hair out and it was now a bit below her shoulders. Also, she now had an aura of confidence around her. Seems like the shy girl grew up to become a beautiful woman. Kiba wore long black pants with his old gray jacket. Nazashi couldn't tell if he wore a shirt under the jacket or not. He looks grown up, but does he act like it? Next to Kiba was Akamaru, that now stood as tall as Kiba's mid-thigh. His white fur had taken on a more reddish color. That dog means business now. Tenten and Shino seemed to not change at all except in height. What is it with this village and lack of change? Damn conservative sons of bitches. Everyone probably has the same old mentality about the Kyuubi and their damn demon child. Nazashi had to mentally slap himself to stop these thoughts, since his left hand was now slightly shaking in anger. Lee had become an exact copy of Guy, I mean exact. I wonder if he has a rivalry with Sasuke. Nazashi decided to keep his distance and instead activated his advanced hearing. Hey Lee, how are you feeling about going into this place again? Asked Kiba. I'm a little nervous about the whole exam, but this place still gives me the creeps, answered Lee. Well, I think we are going to kick. With all the training we had, we will certainly pass, said Kiba in a tone. Same old show-off, thought Nazashi. How are you doing, Hinata? Asked Kiba. Fine, I'm pretty confident, said Hinata in a calm voice, then added a bit softer. I have to do this, for Neji, and Naruto-kun. The final name was in a whisper that no one could hear. Kiba seemed to understand and nodded sadly. It's really a shame that that had to happen. He would have been a great ninja, especially since he managed to rid himself of his superiority complex. Yes, thanks to Naruto-kun, the last part was whispered. You still think he'll come back? Asked Kiba. I have to believe that we didn't lose 2 ninjas in that one mission. She gave a slight glare in Sasuke's direction. Nice to see he's not well liked, Nazashi smirked behind his mask. Yeah, said Kiba sadly, with Neji dying and Naruto going away. So Neji never did recover, interesting. Naruto then shifted his attention to Tenten, Ino and Shikamaru. Hey, how come Choji isn't participating? Asked Tenten. He can't, said Shikamaru sadly. Why not? I've worked with him several times and he's pretty strong, said Tenten. His health doesn't permit him to become a Junin, said Ino. His body just won't be able to handle that kind of stress. Oh yeah, that's right. He never fully recovered from 5 years ago. Sorry I asked, apologized Tenten. No, it's all right, said Shikamaru. Seems that so much shit happened on that one mission, Nazashi sighed. At least he was able to become a Chunin. He's a good person and a good ninja, he deserves it. Tenten suddenly smiled slyly. Anyway, how are you two Naris doing? Hey, we aren't married yet, retorted Ino, pushing Tenten slightly. Shikamaru just looked bored as usual and mumbled something about troublesome women. So, Ino and Shikamaru, interesting, a lot has happened while I was out. Akamaru's barking made Nazashi refocus his attention on Kiba. Nazashi noticed that Akamaru seemed to be looking at him. What is it, boy? What do you smell? Asked Kiba. Nazashi instantly hid himself in the crowd, his little espionage session over. What? You smell a fox. The grass nin is suspicious. Kiba repeated what Akamaru said. Shit. Maybe changing my scent to a fox's wasn't such a good idea. I forgot foxes are taboo in Konoha. Gotta be careful not summon one here. Just then the examiner for the test appeared in storm of leaves. He was dressed in regular Junin clothes with his forehead protector on his head, except it was tilted down to cover his left eye. If you don't know who this is, reread the whole manga. Out of all the possibilities it had to him. Seems I'm gonna have no luck here. Nazashi's right arm shook in anger at the sight of his former teacher. Oh, how I hope to go up against his prized student. I wonder how good Sasuke is with the Sharingan and whether or not he has Mangekyo. Welcome everybody, to the Junin exam. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. Now for the first part of the exam, you will each get a scroll with a special number on it, explained Kakashi. Oh god, not again, thought a bored Nazashi. For the next 5 days you will be living in there, said Kakashi, pointing behind him, the forest of death. Some of the Chunins cringed slightly at the name, but most didn't seem to care. Now try not to lose your scroll, since in your hands it is worth 3 points. In anyone else's hands it is worth 1 point. To pass this part you have to have at least 4 points by the end of 5 days. So each person has to fight at least one other person. Easy enough. You will not be allowed to leave the forest for the next 5 days. Anbu will be posted right outside to make sure of that. Anyone who leaves will instantly be disqualified. At the end of the 5-day time period you are to report to the tower in the middle of the forest. The tower's doors will open only after the 5-day period is up, explained Kakashi. Any questions? No one said anything, and Kakashi told everyone that the exam would begin in 1 hour. As Nazashi went to the stand to take his scroll, he overheard the conversation between Kakashi and Kurenai. I'm surprised you were on time, said Kurenai. Kakashi put his hand on the back of his head. Well, you see, the Hokage threatened some horrible things if I were late. Really? Like what? Asked Kurenai. She said she would personally come into my house and burn all the Come Paradise books I owned, answered Kakashi. Kurenai's eyebrow twitched a couple of times before she finally socked him in the face, then just turned around and walked away from him, mumbling something about perverts. And some things never change. 1 hour later, Nazashi was jumping through the forest looking for Kiba, when he suddenly smelled 3 ninjas in front of him. It's those 3-leaf nin that I don't know. Nazashi instantly created a cage bushin and sent it to explore on the ground, while the real Nazashi followed in the trees. The clone ran into the clearing to find that no one was there. Suddenly it noticed that several shuriken were flying at him. It dodged them rather easily, but was kicked in the stomach by someone and sent flying into a tree. The 3-leaf nin then jumped down from their hiding places and started moving towards the fallen clone. What idiots, thought Nazashi with a small sigh. Nazashi waited until the 3 ninjas were right next to his clone and then finally jumped down, performing hand seals in midair. He landed with absolute silence, whispered, Kaden, Karyu Enden, brought his fingers to his mouth and breathed out fire. The ninjas barely had time to turn their heads around when the fire upon them. They screamed as the flames consumed them. Once the jutsu was done, Nazashi looked the burned corpses of 3 ninjas. Idiots, gathering like that over a clone, psh, rookies. Nazashi searched them and found the scrolls were unharmed. Seems they are smarter this time and actually put a barrier jutsu on the scroll. Thank you, said Nazashi to the corpses as he pocketed the scrolls and ran off to find Kiba. Kiba was walking through a small clearing with Akamaru at his side. Suddenly Akamaru turned his head and growled. What is it, Akamaru? Asked Kiba, looking around. Akamaru barked. That fox smell again, huh? Kiba contemplated, then yelled out, come out and fight like a man. Nazashi chuckled and walked out into the clearing. Hello, Kiba. How the hell do you know my name? Yelled Kiba. Don't recognize, said Nazashi in a flat tone. That's too bad. Nazashi tilted his head to the side and asked, how about now? What the hell? Thought a bewildered Kiba. His scent just changed. That's impossible, yet it's somehow familiar. Don't remember. Nazashi continued in the flat tone. Seems your memory isn't that good, Kiba. My memory? Wait a second. Chills ran down Kiba's spine. Could it be? Could it be? Who? Continued Nazashi. Naruto. Asked Kiba uncertainly. Yes, Kiba. Long time no see. Nazashi's tone was beginning to unnerve Kiba. Also, the fact that Nazashi's eyes were completely cold made Kiba shiver a little bit, but he didn't pay attention to it. So you've finally returned? Asked Kiba in a happy tone. So good to have you back. Nazashi couldn't help but smirk under his mask. He's relaxing, his defenses are falling. Thank you, Kiba, you're making this a lot easier. For as long as I'm back, countered Nazashi. What do you mean by that? Said Kiba with a hint of confusion in his voice. Let's just say I'm not planning to stay for long, answered Nazashi in a sly tone. You've joined another village, haven't you? Asked Kiba, motioning to the forehead protector on Nazashi's arm. Oh, this is borrowed, in the interest of getting into Konoha. Borrowed? Asked Kiba, slowly raising his defenses once again. Then why are you here? Then as an afterthought added, to get the Junin title right. Thank you, Kiba, you kept your defenses down just long enough for me to set everything up. It's not about the title, it's about the skill, replied Nazashi in a cold tone. Nazashi's heightened senses told him that they were completely alone, so he didn't mind disclosing this information to Kiba. And I'm not here on behalf of any village, but I am here on behalf of an organization, said Nazashi slyly. Organization? What the hell could he mean by that? But by the looks of it he expects me to know, Kiba mused thoughtfully. Hokage-sama mentioned something about an organization some time ago. Wait, if I remember correctly she said that that organization had been looking for Naruto, but no way. Nazashi noted Kiba's eyes flash in confused realization and said, yes Kiba, it is the one you are thinking of. The fear was clearly written on Kiba's face for several seconds before he finally composed himself, and that fear turned to anger. You betrayed the leaf, growled Kiba and Akamaru. Nazashi laughed slightly. What's the matter Kiba? Didn't expect me to be an enemy. I'm gonna kill you, yelled Kiba. You will die a traitor's death. There he goes again telling me his goal, and it looks like he's blinded by emotion, betrayal if I'm not mistaken. You're making this too easy Kiba. Beast effect ninpu, yelled Kiba, beast human Bushin. Kiba grew claws and Akamaru transformed into Kiba. Piercing fang, yelled Kiba, as he and Akamaru spun about their center wildly and headed straight for Nazashi. This old technique. How do you expect to win against me using something I have already seen? Thought Nazashi in a bored tone. Nazashi merely placed his hands in the chakra summoning position. Raiden, electric wall no jutsu, he whispered. Suddenly the outlines of a chain-linked fence made up of electricity became visible right in front of Kiba. Kiba saw it, but could not bring himself or Akamaru to stop in time and forcefully collided with the wall. As the electric current made its way into Kiba's body he screamed as his muscles were being burned. Akamaru was forced to return to his original state and also whimpered and howled in pain. Nazashi smirked. Thank you Kiba, you lowered your defenses just enough for me to be able to set this up. Otherwise I would have had to go through a lot more hand seals. At that point the wall seemed to collapse, but did not fade. Rather it became more like a net through which the electricity was still circulating. Oh dear me, said Nazashi in a fake carrying tone, did I forget to mention that this is an electric wall, chakra net combo. Nazashi then stretched out his right hand, with the palm pointing upwards and wiggled his fingers in what seemed to be a random order. However every time he wiggled a finger Kiba and Akamaru would howl in pain. You see Kiba, through the use of chakra strings I am controlling the amount of chakra going into the chakra net. This way also allows me to contrast and expand the net as I see fit. The chakra is actually being converted to electric energy, hence the name, electric chakra net. Nazashi suddenly shook off his hand and the chakra net disappeared. Nazashi quietly surveyed the damage he had done. Akamaru was completely knocked out, perhaps dead, and Kiba was struggling to get to his feet. Ah, sighed Nazashi, enough is enough Kiba, time to end this, said Nazashi in a cold bored tone. Suddenly Kiba felt pain in his back and chest. He looked down and his eyes widened in horror. A clawed hand completely covered in blood was sticking out of his chest. Kiba's leg muscles no longer held him up, this hand was the only thing that was keeping him from falling. He suddenly noticed that the Nazashi in front of him disappeared in a cloud of smoke, that was a Kage Bushin. Blood was now pouring out of Kiba's mouth like a river, he was finding it difficult to breathe. He coughed, but more blood just kept coming out. The world around him seemed to get hazy and spin a little. Somewhere far off in the distance it seemed he heard a voice. Goodbye Kiba, this was a nice reunion we had. The voice seemed to continue to say something else, but he couldn't make out what. Suddenly his head dropped down and the last thing he saw was blood red before the world faded to black. This was a nice reunion we had, but you're a liability Kiba. I can't have you exposing me, said Nazashi in a completely cold tone. I'm sorry it had to end this way, seems another person of our 5-man team has died, but, such is life. Nazashi took Kiba's scroll and stood for a second thinking, now who else could be a liability? Sasuke. Not really. Lee. Definitely not. Shikamaru. A potential. He'll pick up on clues easily enough. Shino. Probably not. Hinata. Also probably not. Tenten. Nope. Ino. With her mind jutsus and all, a potential. Nazashi then ran off on a random course through the forest hoping to meet up with Shikamaru or Ino. Ino was running through the forest when she suddenly spotted someone out of the corner of her eye. She slowed down and quietly crept up to see who it was. There she saw the grass nin seemingly sleeping with his back against a tree. A smile slowly crept its way to her lips. Perfect, I'll just use my mind-body switch jutsu and take his scroll. Ino positioned her hands in that special seal and said, Shintenshin no jutsu. Instantly Ino's body went limp, while Nazashi's body began moving. Nazashi stood up, took his scroll out, walked over to Ino's body and put it in her pouch. Nazashi then went back to where he was before and Ino then released her jutsu. Ino woke up in her own body, checked to make sure she had the scroll, and smiled a little bit. Good, I got a scroll. Now I have to keep it for the next 5 days. I better find Shikaku. However, Ino was unable to finish her musing, because she felt her right arm being painfully twisted behind her back and felt cold steel graze her neck. Ah! Cried Ino and struggled against her captor. Calm down, Ino-chan, said a cold voice behind her. Wouldn't want Shikakun to mourn you now, would you? Ino froze. Howdy, did you know my name? Nobody seems to recognize me after 5 years, continued the voice. I suppose that's a good thing though, considering the circumstances. 5 years, Ino then saw the body that she had occupied vanish in a push of smoke, a cage bushin, no way. Naruto, is that you? Asked Ino in a shaky voice. Guilty as charged, answered Nazashi in a slightly amused voice, however it's Nazashi now, or at least for now. Ino hesitantly reached for the scroll she had just stolen only to find the pocket completely empty. No, Ino-chan, that scroll was a fake. Did you really think someone would just fall asleep like that? You have my scroll, now let me go, Ino whimpered. Ah yes, but you know who I am, said Nazashi. I won't tell anyone, I promise, Ino whimpered in pain. Nazashi immediately noticed this. Am I hurting you, Ino-chan? Could you just relax the grip you have on my arm? Asked Ino. Then you would have a higher chance to escape, replied Nazashi in a flat tone, and I don't see why I should have to chase you, if I already have a tight hold. Release me, commanded Ino, or I'll scream, and then more people will come and your identity will be found out. Nazashi's cold laughter sent a chill down Ino's spine. You scream and I'll shove this kunai straight through your voice box, said Nazashi in a cold voice after abruptly ending his laughter. Ino trembled visibly. And another thing, Ino-chan, there's nobody around us in a half-mile radius, Nazashi stated simply. What do you want with me? Asked Ino. Ah, getting down to business, are we? Said Nazashi as more of a statement. Well, if you must know, Nazashi then leaned in and whispered into Ino's ear, I consider you a liability. Liability? Questioned Ino uncertainly. Yes, a liability. A liability that a missing nin like myself doesn't need. Are you going to kill me? Asked Ino in a surprisingly calm tone. I like you, Ino-chan, said Nazashi while running a finger through her hair. You gave me a much better welcome than Kiba, said Nazashi instead of an answer. You've met Kiba. Yes, and you will meet him soon too, stated Nazashi in an amused cold tone. However, since you're so much nicer, you will go there more quickly and easily. Nazashi's head shifted slightly and Ino could hear sharp, short inhaling noises. It seems we are out of time, stated Nazashi. So, sorry that we have to cut this joyous reunion short. I would have loved to stay and chat about old times, but I must leave now, said Nazashi and brought the kunai closer to Ino's throat. Nazashi then leaned in and whispered softly into Ino's ear, Goodbye, Ino-chan, don't worry, if circumstances permit I'll be sure to tell Shika-kun that you loved him very much. Ino's body shook and several teardrops fell out of her eyes. Shika-kun, why does it have to end like this? And with that Nazashi dug his kunai into one side of her throat and pulled it all the way to the other side. Too bad it had to end this way, Ino-chan, but, my mission comes first, said Nazashi while gently placing Ino's body on the ground. Poor Shika-kun, he was always nice to me and I go and do something like this, I may as well. Nazashi took out a piece of paper, wrote something quickly in Ino's blood and put it in her vest pocket. He then stood up, did a few quick hand seals and disappeared. Standing on top of the tallest tree in the vicinity, Nazashi surveyed his position in the forest. Just my horrible accursed luck, I'm on the far edge of the forest, directly opposite of the place I have to scout. Nazashi looked once more at the scenery, memorizing the approximate path that he would have to take. Since he wanted to avoid the tower, he would have to go on a slight detour. No real problem, about 20 kilometers, so at non-suspicious speeds that would take me about 2 or 3 hours, 1.5 if I don't encounter resistance. 6 hours later, Nazashi was at the edge of the forest and was preparing to sneak out of the testing area. First it's 5 leaf nins, now it's 5 random ninjas. And why is everyone so hell-bent on killing me? I would have just pounded the crap out some of them, but no, they give me shit like, I'm not going to give up until I die, and many other variations. Then when I do kill them, fear is the dominating emotion clearly written in their eyes. Nazashi was just appalled at the absolute stupidity of some of the ninjas. Why is everyone so stupid? I know I'm good at hiding my chakra and erasing my presence, but this is sad. How hard is it to understand that I always move in doubles, my clone is in front and I'm slightly lagging behind. God, the Kyuubi was right, stupid, arrogant and ignorant humans, never thought I would actually believe him. Nazashi now considered himself more like a half-demon or something, but absolute not a regular human. He had just finished bandaging his right forearm, which was damaged by a wind attack, and was now swapping his grass forehead protector for his old leaf forehead protector. Who would have thought that I actually would need this someday? Now let's see, the guards are only posted at the fence, so I'll just use Shadow Step and teleport myself up to its maximum of 500 yards. Nazashi started doing the hand seals, but suddenly stopped when he remembered a little detail. I can't go like this, I'll need to change my appearance. Nazashi smirked and laughed slightly, seems I only use this jutsu in the leaf. Henge, Nazashi whispered and transformed into his girl form. No jutsu, with clothes this time around, now Shadow Step and I can go scouting after dinner. 5 days later, most of survivors had already made it into the building and the examiners were going to close the doors, when they felt a slight chakra signature heading toward the tower. Nazashi was the last person to enter the tower. He would have forgotten about the exam, if he hadn't reached into his pocket and pulled out one of the scrolls. In his hurry he almost forgot to switch back his forehead protectors. Once inside, Nazashi walked up to a Junin sitting behind a desk that was covered in scrolls. Give me your name and your scroll, ordered the Junin. Nazashi of the grass, said Nazashi and handed the Junin his scroll. Alright, I have verified that this is indeed your scroll, so you now have 3 points, now give me any other scrolls you collected. Nazashi then reached into another pocket and pulled out 10 other scrolls. The Junin's eyes widened at the amount of scrolls Nazashi had. Wow, well, you certainly set the record for the most scrolls, stated the Junin in a somewhat dreamy voice. The Junin noticed that 5 of the scrolls were that of leaf nins. Did you kill anyone to obtain these scrolls? Nazashi knew that the Junin was mostly asking this in relation to the leaf nins. This is the real world, shit happens, now where do I go? Said Nazashi in a cold voice. Just go down the corridor and take a left. You will arrive at a small arena. Upon walking in, he was lined up along with the other participants. Nazashi looked around the room to survey who was still there. Seems I was the only person to take out any of the leaf ninjas. Nazashi came up with the following list for the remaining participants. Grass 1, Leaf 6, Sand 2, Stone 1, Mist 2, Rain 2, Cloud 1, Snow 1. In the front of the room, a Junin seemed to drop out of nowhere and land calmly in front of the crowd. Good day everyone that survived it through the first part of the exam. My name is Maida Guy and I will be your examiner for the next test. Oh God, he hasn't changed a bit, he's still a freak, thought Nazashi as he looked at Guy trying very hard to hide his disgust. Still, if he's the examiner, then the test must be taijutsu related, not that I really care. The next part of the exam will commence in 2 days at Training Area 29 at 11 a.m. This should give you plenty of time to relax, said Guy with his signature pose. Nazashi noticed all the leaf nins sweat drop and shake their heads in disapproval, while Nazashi just sighed deeply. Oh yes, and the next test will consist of one-on-one fights, taijutsu only, yelled Guy. After that all the chunins were dismissed. Nazashi made a few hand seals and vanished, not wanting to deal with any of his former comrades anymore. 2 days later all the participants came to the 29th training area. The training area was kind of like an arena except no stands, and it was all underground, as a sort of pit. It was obvious that they were going to be fighting down in the pit. At exactly 11 a.m. a cloud of smoke appeared next to the participants and outstepped the examiner. Good morning everyone, yelled Guy. First it's Kakashi, then his eternal rival, thought Nazashi exasperated, who's next Arrow Sennin doing the third exam. Damn it, if only the mission were going a bit better, I might have already been out of here already. We will now start the second exam. The fighters will be picked at random, continued Guy. The only weapons you can use are shuriken and kunai. However, we'll be watching to make sure you don't chakra enhance any of your weapons. Also, you may not use any blood limits, from now until this exam is over. That includes the times when you are not fighting. That first rule was meant mostly for me, thought Nazashi while surveying the people around him and not finding anyone else with a katana or any other type of mid-range weapon. However, it is nice to know that my skills won't be copied by that bastard. All of the fights will occur down there, said Guy while pointing into the pit of doom. Everyone's sweat dropped. Well, that's the unofficial name at least, said Guy. Idiot, sighed Nazashi. Guy then made his way down into the pit and the participants seemed to sort themselves out, in terms of village again, on the ledge above. Nazashi found himself standing on the far side away from the leaf nin, closer to the cloud and snow ninjas. First match will be Uchiha Sasuke vs. Yumino of the Stone. I don't want to introduce OCs that will probably never be used again, so I'll just BS a name and say which village they are from. Sasuke and the Stone Nin jumped down to the floor and stood facing each other. Begin, yelled Guy. Sasuke instantly pulled out 3 shuriken and threw them at the Stone Nin, who threw his own to counter. The shuriken collided in midair and fell to the ground. The fighters at this time had already launched themselves at each other and were fighting a kunai battle. Sasuke tried to punch and kick at the same time, only to have the Stone Nin easily counter. Nazashi stifled a yawn. Geez, it's an elementary battle. I know they are testing each other, but this is pathetic. How can Chunin be testing each other on a genin level? Losing a little interest in the fight, Nazashi threw his attention over to the remaining leaf nin. This is so troublesome. Even if blood limits can't be used, the Hyuga have a definite advantage over everyone, and I kind of feel sorry for anyone that has to face Lee, said Shikamaru annoyed. Yay, that's true, and anyone who fights Lee is sure to lose, replied Tenten. It also seems as if Sasuke is playing around with his opponent. You worried about any of the foreign ninjas? Why do you ask me? Said Shikamaru in an annoyed tone. Because you're the genius and probably already know who to watch out for, replied Tenten in an amused voice. True, I have been observing everyone since before the test started, and that grass nin is somehow unsettling, thought Shikamaru. I'd watch out for the grass nin, and also the snow and cloud, said Shikamaru. You seem to single out the grass nin, said Lee, joining the conversation. Any reason? He seems more relaxed than anyone here, and didn't even care that he's not allowed to use his katana, replied Shikamaru. So, most people that use a katana are good at taijutsu, said Lee. But katana wielders get used to having their katana and become somewhat dependent on it in close combat, mused Shikamaru. Well, we'll see, said Lee. He really does seem like a worthy opponent, thought Lee of Nazashi. That grass nin doesn't strike me as a taijutsu expert, yet I can't seem to sense any chakra around him and have to concentrate to be able to sense his presence. In combat, the ability to erase your presence could be a deadly advantage, thought Shikamaru and eyed Nazashi cautiously. Damn that Shikamaru. Maybe I should have killed him instead of Ino. Although he doesn't seem to suspect me for ME, which is a plus, but I need to find a way to throw him off. Fighting him to the death might do the trick, that is if I get that lucky, mused Nazashi. Anyway, back to watching the battle. As Sasuke parried yet another kunai strike, his lips curved into a slight smile as he twisted his foot and disappeared. His opponent was shocked. Sasuke then reappeared right behind the stone nin and punched him straight in the back of the head, sending the stone nin flying across the arena. Fast, to the normal spectator, but I can easily see. His vest seems to be weighted down and also his shins. I wonder how much, commented Nazashi, thinking about his own weights. Namely the 500 pounds in his jacket and 250 on each shin. I wish I'd brought my cloak, it has another 500, but it does have the Akatsuki pattern on it. Sasuke waited until his opponent got up and then ran straight toward him. His opponent, thinking this was a reckless frontal attack, simply waited in a semi-defensive stance. Right before reaching his opponent, Sasuke disappeared and throwing off the stone nin once again. Sasuke then reappeared with a vertical kick straight into the stone nin's jaw, sending him flying through the air, and jumped after him. This move, Sasuke, thought Nazashi. I wonder if you're actually going to use Lee's technique or if you're going to do that one combo you have. Sasuke then put his hand on the stone nin's back and went to kick him. The kick of course was blocked, but that was the plan. Sasuke instantly twisted around and hit him in the jaw, sending him down to the ground. Then he brought the back of his foot to his solar plexus to reinforce the collision with the ground. Sasuke, Nazashi slowly shook his head. You developed that 5 years ago, don't you have something better? He then took a moment to reanalyze the last part of the battle. Foolish Sasuke, you're too used to that move, you do it by instinct, and that your opponent will play along, but you simply can't do that. I mean, look at you, even before your opponent fully blocked that kick you were already going for the punch. A more skilled opponent will read through that as easily as a hot knife goes through butter. The stone nin was knocked out instantly. Winner, Uchiha Sasuke, yelled Guy. There were a few cheers by some of the leaf nin, but the participants mostly stayed quiet. That's what's been bugging me, thought Nazashi as he felt a slight mental pressure lift. Where the hell is Sakura? Why isn't she here cheering on her boyfriend? There were a few silent congratulations as Sasuke rejoined his comrades. Kakashi appeared out of nowhere and congratulated him. That damn bastard and his prize student. Oh, how I want to just. Nazashi had to stop that train of thought, of else he would end up releasing his killer intent or worse. After a few deep breaths, he decided to just listen in on their conversation. Hey Sasuke, not much support for you now that your fangirl isn't here, huh? Said Lee, grinning. Yay, replied Sasuke in a bored tone. They said they might come visit during lunch break, said Shikamaru. That would be nice. I haven't seen Choji or Sakura in quite a while, said Hinata. Yea, since they started teaching at the academy, they don't go on regular missions like the rest of us, so it's only natural, replied Shikamaru. So Sakura is an academy teacher. Well, she could easily be, with her brains and all. She's probably replacing Iruka since, I'm guessing, he's a Junin, thought Nazashi. She didn't participate in the last Junin exam either. Said Tenten is more of a question. No, she seems content where she is now. Don't know how anyone could be content teaching a bunch of brats, said Shikamaru with a slight smirk. Their little conversation and Nazashi's listening in session was interrupted by Guy. The second match will be Rock Lee vs. Nazashi of the Grass. Yes, it's finally my turn, yelled Lee. Everyone around him sweat dropped. It has only been one match, said Tenten. But I should have been first, said Lee with fire in his eyes. The sweat drops got bigger. Nazashi chose to ignore Lee's antics and instead unstrapped the katana from his back and put it on the ground beside him. He then proceeded to jump down into the pit, soon after followed by Lee. Of all the people to fight, I get the most difficult, thought Nazashi with a smirk. This should be interesting. However, I'm not quite sure which style to use on him. I suppose I'll play around, let him hit me a few times and it should come to me. This guy is way too calm, thought Lee, and that cold look in his eyes reminds me of Neji. Begin, yelled Guy. Lee instantly went into this signature stance with his right hand stretched out, palm facing away from the opponent. Nazashi didn't even move a muscle, instead just kept staring at Lee dead in the eyes. Damn, his gaze is unnerving, such coldness, and he's not even bothering to get into any kind of stance. Lee shivered at the thought that just hit him. He's so much like Gaara. You can begin, Lee, thought Nazashi with amusement. Lee then instantly dashed forward and attempted to kick Nazashi. Nazashi simply ducked right before the kick would have connected. Lee spun back around, preparing a low kick that would hit his crouching opponent in the face, only to find that Nazashi was nowhere to be found. Lee turned around to find Nazashi standing at the other end of the arena in that same stance with his arms crossed. He's fast, thought Lee. Lee then rushed over and performed a series of fast consecutive kicks and punches that were aimed all over Nazashi's body. Nazashi managed to dodge all of them except the last one, which he had to block. Lee had performed a kick aimed at Nazashi's right side. Nazashi blocked with his right arm and disappeared, to reappear right behind Lee and kick him in the back. Lee was a little surprised that Nazashi went on the offensive so suddenly and being unable to block, ended up flying into the wall in front of him. The observing Leaf Nins were shocked to see that Lee was caught unawares with his back open. Damn, that guy is fast, commented Shikamaru. I was right, he is strong. To be able to dodge and block Lee like that. That's impressive, but Lee isn't using his full potential yet, thought Kakashi. I might need my Sharingan to keep up with the battle, later on. That was just a lucky opening since he was distracted by attacking and he is most likely not going all out yet, mused Nazashi, his mind instinctively re-analyzing the last segment of the battle. I need a way to slow him down. Injury is probably the best option. He's much too fast for launching shuriken. Kunai, I haven't used them in a long time so I don't the necessary speed to be effective. That narrows it down to just my hands. Perhaps I could, yeah, that will work rather well. Nazashi jumped back a little bit and waited for Lee to get back up. Lee bounced up and seemed unaffected by the attack, excluding the bruises on his face. He proceeded to take off his Chunin vest and threw it on the ground with a loud thud. Just as I suspected, it's weighted, but he's carrying less in that vest than I have in my jacket. Lee rushed at Nazashi again. This time he was significantly faster, and even though Nazashi did a great job blocking and dodging, he was finally caught off guard as Lee punched him in the middle of the chest. Nazashi was thrown back by the impact, did a flip in midair and landed on his feet several yards away. Lee, meanwhile, opened and closed his fist several times. So your jacket is weighted too? Asked Lee, and Nazashi shrugged a little. That's got to be quite a bit of weight if Lee had to check his hand like that, thought Sasuke. Lee ran at full speed toward Nazashi. He's obviously going to do the vertical kick. Now, do I dodge or show off the counter I developed? Nazashi smirked. Lee disappeared right before reaching Nazashi, however Nazashi just stood there unmoving and waited with his hands at his sides. He's not the least bit surprised, thought Shikamaru, worried. It's as if he's waiting for it, thought Kakashi. Lee then reappeared in front of Nazashi with a vertical kick straight to his jaw and sent Nazashi flying through the air. Nazashi waited patiently for Lee to begin the leaf shadow dance. Once he felt Lee's presence below him, Nazashi began preparing for his own move. Lee quickly undid the bandages surrounding his arms and was about to bind Nazashi with them, when he suddenly felt a slight tug at the bandage on his left hand. The next thing he knew, Nazashi had turned around and was staring him dead in the eyes. As soon as Lee had released his bandages, Nazashi instantly grabbed the bandage on his left side with his right hand. Nazashi then pulled the bandage sharply and while twisting his body at the same time. It had worked perfectly. Lee was thrown off by what Nazashi had done and had given Nazashi the opportunity of first strike. Nazashi punched Lee in the solar plexus, causing the distance between their bodies to grow. Within 2 seconds after the punch, Nazashi bent his legs and brought his knees up to his chin, all the while causing himself to do a quarter of a backflip. He then kicked Lee in the face with both his feet, sending Lee down to the ground at a rather fast speed. Everyone in the crowd, especially the Leaf Nin, was absolutely shocked that Lee's technique had failed. The Leaf Chunin didn't even have time to gasp before Lee slammed into the ground at full force. A large cloud of dust rose from where Lee had crashed. Lee then proceeded to tumble for several seconds and finally his body came to stop several dozen yards away from what was now the crater that his impact had created. Nazashi meanwhile landed softly in a crouching position, in the middle of the arena and stood up at a leisurely pace. The Leaf Nin gasped loudly and stared in absolute shock at Nazashi. They could not believe that Nazashi had not only successfully countered it, but had also managed to give Lee about the same amount of damage that the Leaf Shadow Dance should have done to Nazashi. Nazashi noticed that all eyes were on him and decided to speak for the first time during the match. Leaf Shadow Dance counter, he said in a cold tone. A counter? No way, thought Kakashi wide-eyed, though it is possible, but to be able to think of one instantly, that's too unrealistic. How the hell? That counter was thought up and executed within 5 seconds, is he a genius? Sasuke was absolutely bewildered. I couldn't even see a counter with my Sharingan that fast, but who is he? Shikamaru suddenly broke the silence in a shaky voice. He knew Lee was going to do that. Everyone instantly looked at him. I knew something was wrong when he didn't even budge as soon as Lee rushed him. That counter was not thought up just now. No, he already knew it. That's impossible, said Tenten. Then he would have had to have seen it before. Yes, that is the only logical explanation, replied Shikamaru. Oh good, so he's not a super genius. But still, how did he know about the technique? Thought Sasuke, relieved and worried at the same time. Still, to be able to come up with a counter for this kind of technique, truly amazing, said Kakashi. I'm not sure, but he may have done something else too. Lee slowly got back up to his knees, and coughed out a little bit of blood before jumping up to his feet once again, but something was wrong. Lee tried lifting his arms, but to no avail. He could easily move his shoulders and even raise his elbows, but couldn't really move anything below his elbows. His wrist, hand and fingers shook as he desperately tried to do something with them, but his muscles seemed to not respond. What the hell is going on here? Thought Lee, confused and a little scared that he was now at a disadvantage because of his arms. At this point Lee didn't even care about the blood at the edge of his mouth, nose and forehead. Don't worry too much about it, said Nazashi in a cold and slightly amused tone. Those pressure points will release naturally, after the match. All the Chunin were shocked. None of them had even managed to see when he pressed the pressure points. There's no way he could have pressed anything, without me seeing it. Plus he must have been pretty distracted trying to perform that counter combo perfectly. Sasuke stared at Lee's condition. Still, I can't deny the fact that Lee's lower arms are now useless. This guy must be some sort of pressure point specialist. Kakashi suddenly spoke up, startling the Chunin. He pressed them right before punching Lee in the stomach. I was right, that guy is definitely a force to be reckoned with, thought Shikamaru, his eyes wide at the entire scene. He lured in Lee. Shikamaru started. That time when Lee punched him in the chest, he was thrown back, but landed very gracefully. Shikamaru started explaining. He gave Lee the perfect distance for the shadow dance and intentionally let the vertical kick go through. All the while knowing that Lee wouldn't be able to do any significant damage, but instead would be in a position to take significant damage. Nazashi couldn't wait any longer. Knowing that those pressure points are not the kind to hold for very long, Lee was already figuring out that his lower arms were becoming more and more responsive. He rushed at Lee using his normal attack speed, which was about the same as Lee's speed without his vest. Nazashi jumped up and kicked Lee in the right side of his head. Lee would have flown halfway across the room had Nazashi not grabbed him by his right arm and pulled him back, instantly pressing a point on Lee's right shoulder. Nazashi then rotated around, kneed Lee in the stomach with his left leg and at the same time crouched down and hit a pressure point on Lee's thigh. At this time Lee could only bend over, cough out more blood and try to stand up. Nazashi then jumped up, preparing a mid-air kick that then connected with the left side of Lee's chest and sent him into the wall behind him. Think Trinity in the Matrix. The impact caused Lee to make a rather large indentation in the wall and fall down into a crawling position. He coughed out more blood, but did not give up and struggled to stand up. Once back up on his feet, he rejoiced when he found that he could once again move his left hand. It was extremely sore, but that was better than nothing. However, his happiness instantly disappeared when he found that he had lost all control over his right arm. It wouldn't even twitch slightly, but just hung useless. He also found that if he put more than 30% of his weight onto his left leg, that it wouldn't hold him. Damn it! What the hell is he doing? He's somehow numbing my muscles, oh no! Thought Lee as his eyes slightly widened in horror. He must be using some form of the Kyusho style, pressure point techniques. I have no idea how to fight this style. Now that his arm is going to be out for several hours, I could play around with him, hitting more pressure points and make this a very painful defeat, mused Naruto, but I have nothing personal against Lee, I actually somewhat respect him, so I'll just end it. Nazashi then suddenly disappeared and reappeared on Lee's right side. He made it look like he only grabbed Lee by the right shoulder, but in reality he was actually pressing a hard-to-reach pressure point on Lee's cerebellum. Nazashi then punched Lee in the lower back. However, Nazashi's hand wasn't in a traditional fist formation, instead his index finger was sticking out slightly. This enabled Nazashi to hit a pressure point with a lot more force than one or two fingers could provide. Lee fell face forward onto the floor of the arena and didn't get back up. Everyone including Guy was horrified. As far as the Leaf Nin were concerned, some unknown ninja from the hidden grass was able to beat their taijutsu specialist in a pure taijutsu battle. Everyone just sort of gaped at him for several minutes. Nazashi looked at Guy, calmly and patiently waiting to be announced the winner. Guy was just looking at Lee as if waiting for him to get up any second now. Nazashi was getting annoyed. Lee is not going to get up any time today, so this match is over, said Nazashi forcefully enough to gain Guy's attention, but not enough to appear rude. Not get up today? No way, Lee, cried Guy in his mind, then slowly regained his composure. Winner. Nazashi of the grass, said Guy somewhat uncertainly. There was no clapping, mostly because everyone was still gaping. Lee, you were a strong opponent, thought Nazashi. It was an honor to have had the opportunity to fight you. Nazashi nodded slightly and jumped back up to the top. to where his katana was. While the medics were removing Lee's body and Nazashi was restrapping his katana, the Leaf Nins were able to come out of their daze and talk amongst themselves. How did that just happen? Asked Sasuke shocked. What was that style he was using? Asked Hinata confused. How? JJ just how? Asked Tenten bewildered. Shino and Shikamaru just stayed quiet, but were asking those same questions in their mind. Pressure point techniques, replied Kakashi slowly. I don't really know any, we'll ask Guy after the test. I've read about pressure point techniques and styles, said Shikamaru uncertainly, but I couldn't recognize any stances he did, however some attacks did look familiar. Familiar? Asked Tenten. Yes, the one where Nazashi kneed Lee and then bent down a little lower to hit a pressure point in the thigh, replied Lee. The problem is those are individual techniques, but that guy uses them in combination with something else. He's combining styles, said Kakashi. Huh, what do you combining style? Aren't you supposed to use only one at a time? Asked Sasuke somewhat confused. That's not what I meant. High-level taijutsu masters take all the styles they know and combine into one. Their own style, explained Kakashi. Wait, you said high level, so how strong do you think that Nazashi is? Asked Shikamaru. Junin level probably, replied Kakashi. It's difficult to tell, I haven't seen his ninjutsu and genjutsu. Though I don't really think I need to. Guy had finally regained his composure enough to get the fights underway again. Third fight, Sato of the Sand vs. Shilimo of the Rain. Anyone could clearly see that Sato was faster and stronger than Shilimo. Sato rushed at the Rain Nin and fiercely attacked him from all directions. At first Shilimo was able to parry and block, but soon took several kicks and punches to the stomach and was thrown back. The Sand Nin immediately rushed at Shilimo, covering him in punches and kicks. Just as Sato was going to deal the final blow, the Rain Nin panicked and used Kawarimi. The match was instantly stopped and the Rain Nin disqualified. Winner. Sato of the Sand. Proclaimed Guy. The Sand Nin was going to win anyway, thought Nazashi. That guy's speed was pretty good. I liked his taijutsu style, a sort of a no-mercy attack and don't give your opponents any time to recover, thought Sasuke passively. The fourth match. Aburame Shino vs. Kurono of the Snow, announced Guy. Shino and Kurono both jumped down to the arena floor and glared at each, Shino through his sunglasses and Kurono through her bright green eyes. Begin, said Guy. Instantly Shino took out 3 shuriken and threw them at Kurono, while himself jumping off to the right. Kurono took out her kunai and easily deflected 2 of the shuriken and dodged the other one and instantly did a spin kick backwards. Shino barely had time to duck to avoid her kick. He took out his own kunai and tried to cut her other leg. Kurono noticed this and jumped back, throwing 2 shuriken at Shino. He deflected one, but the other hit him in the left shoulder. Shino cried out in pain and looked up at his opponent only to find an empty arena. Where the hell did she go? Thought Shino, looking around. Just as Shino turned his head to look behind him, a foot connected with his jaw and sent him flying, head first, into the wall on the opposite end of the arena. Shino collapsed and lost consciousness. Winner. Kurono of the Snow. Said Guy. Smart girl, mused Nazashi approvingly. Wait, that's not fair, exclaimed Tenten. Guy-sensei said that you couldn't add chakra to your attacks. No, he said that you can't chakra enhance your weapons, replied Shikamaru. He didn't say anything about your body. A ninja must read underneath the underneath, said Kakashi proudly. The fifth match. Sumeto of the Mist vs. Keely of the Rain, yelled Guy. The fighters were about equal in strength, but Sumeto was definitely faster. After several punch, kick and kunai, shuriken attacks, the Rain Nin started getting visibly worn out, and it was then that the Mist Nin caught Keely from behind and held a kunai to his throat until the Rain Nin surrendered. Winner. Sumeto of the Mist. Said Guy. The Mist specialize in stealth killing, mused Nazashi. Plus, the Rain Nin seemed to be a long-range type anyway. The sixth match. Nara Shikamaru vs. Haruko of the Mist, yelled Guy. Good luck Shikamaru, said Tenten. This is so troublesome, thought Shikamaru, but jumped down anyway. Shikamaru stood there facing his opponent with his hands in his pockets looking like he didn't give a damn, which he probably didn't. His opponent on the other hand was standing in a battle position with stern expression on her face. Begin, yelled Guy. Immediately Haruko launched 3 shuriken at Shikamaru, which he dodged easily. She then appeared right behind him and attempted to kick him in the back, but Shikamaru dodged the 2. Is he too lazy to attack? Wondered Nazashi. The Mist Nin did not relent in her attacks and came at him once again punching and kicking at high speeds. Shikamaru managed to block and dodge most of her attacks, but was hit by several punches in the chest and a kick to his right side sent him tumbling on the ground. The Mist Nin waited until Shikamaru go back up and then threw 2 shuriken at him. This time Shikamaru parried the shuriken with his kunai. Then suddenly jumped forward, while throwing his kunai behind him. Shikamaru smirked when he heard the Mist Nin cry out in pain. Shikamaru's kunai had hit her in the right shoulder. Shikamaru then jumped back and did a spin kick which hit the Mist Nin on the left side of her head and knocked her down to the ground. He bent down, grabbed his kunai and twisted it while pulling it out, making the Mist Nin scream out in pain. Wow, I didn't know Shikamaru had it in him, commented Tenten. Yeah, agreed Hinata. Just then an Anbu appeared next to the group and walked over to Kakashi. Kakashi-san, may I have a word? Asked the Anbu. Of course, said Kakashi as he excused himself, walked out of earshot of the participants. What is it? Asked Kakashi. We found the missing leaf Chunin, answered the Anbu somewhat hesitantly. Kakashi looked at him significantly, expecting the worst, and when the Anbu shook his head, he got it. All of them? Asked Kakashi. Yes. How? Asked Kakashi somewhat angrily. 3 by fire. 1 had her throat slit and the other. The other? Asked Kakashi suspiciously. Who? And what exactly happened? Kiba. We found him, with a hole in his chest, answered the Anbu uncertainly, and his dog seemed to have been electrocuted. A Cloud Nin? Asked Kakashi. Perhaps. Does look like a Raiden jutsu. But? Inquired Kakashi. Well, as you must know, there was only one person who brought in leaf scrolls, Kakashi nodded, and that person was not of the Cloud. Yes, but he might have taken the scroll from the Cloud Nin afterwards, said Kakashi trying to be objective. That is possible, considering the 3 groups were all killed using different styles. Wait, 3 groups, said Kakashi. Yes, when I said 3 people killed by fire, I meant they were all killed in a group. Using one fire jutsu, Kakashi was surprised. From the looks of it, yes. Well, thank you for the information, said Kakashi. Oh, there is one other thing, said the Anbu while reaching into his pocket and pulling out a note. He handed it to Kakashi and said, this was clipped to Ino's jacket. On the cover it read, to Shikamaru. I would appreciate if you gave it to him, said the Anbu. Of course, by all means, replied Kakashi. The Anbu turned to leave, then stopped and said, the bodies are being delivered to the morgue and the funeral will probably be in 2 days. With that he disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Kakashi pocketed the note and walked back to the testing area, refusing to answer any questions about the Anbu. Meanwhile, Shikamaru held the bloody kunai in his hand for a second without moving, then jumped away letting his opponent get up. The Mist Nin got up, but found that because of her shoulder wound she could barely control her right arm. Damn it, I don't stand a chance if I can't use my arm. She pulled out her own kunai and rushed Shikamaru. She viciously attacked him, kicking, cutting and stabbing at him, but was greatly hindered by the fact that she couldn't use her right arm. Shikamaru read through this and managed to lead the fighting in such a way that he soon found himself at her right side. Knowing that she couldn't do anything, Shikamaru jumped behind her and held his kunai to her throat, telling her to surrender or else. The Mist Nin, knowing that resistance would be futile, gave in and surrendered. Winner. Nara Shikamaru, yelled Guy. Yay. Bravo Shikamaru. You did it, yelled Tenten. Shikamaru quite calmly took the stairs back up to the ground level where his friends waited. After the congratulations were through, Kakashi approached Shikamaru and beckoned him to follow him a little ways away from the arena. Shikamaru followed silently. Kakashi took out the note from his pocket and gave it to Shikamaru. I'm sorry Shikamaru, said Kakashi as he placed a hand on the Chunin's shoulder. Shikamaru looked down at the note in his hands and noticed that the words were written in blood. His heart skipped a beat. With shaking hands he opened the note. It read, Shika-kun, Ino-chan loved you very much. Her last words were about you. But this was a calculated risk. I'm sorry. Shikamaru couldn't take any more of this and broke down, falling to his knees with tears rolling down his cheeks. Why? Was the only coherent thing that Kakashi could make out of Shikamaru's muttering. I'm sorry, I don't know, said Kakashi sadly. By now, Tenten had noticed that something was wrong and ran over to her friend. What happened? She asked. Shikamaru couldn't answer properly, just sort of motioned to the note, which had already fallen out of his hand. Tenten picked it up and read it quickly, then instantly hugged Shikamaru and tried to comfort him. Kakashi was able to hold his emotionless mask and walked away slightly, making a note to call Tenten when it was her turn to battle. When he came back to the group, he was instantly bombarded with questions about Shikamaru. He told Sasuke that he could go and talk to Shikamaru, but did not allow Hinata to go, reasoning that she hasn't fought yet. Hinata reluctantly agreed, but vowed to talk to Shikamaru after her match. The seventh match. Minoto of the Sand vs. Hikoma of the Cloud, said Guy. Hikoma used an interesting tactic. In the very beginning she pulled out 3 shuriken, but never threw them all of them, just 2. At the same time she charged at his opponent, still holding the 1 shuriken. The Sand Nin thought that Hikoma had thrown all of her shuriken, so relaxed a little bit after parrying the first 2. Hikoma meanwhile had thrown the last one, when she was on the Sand Nin's side, and so when the Cloud Nin attacked the Sand Nin from behind, the shuriken freely hit Minoto in the middle of the chest. Not willing to lose the opportunity, Hikoma kicked the Sand Nin in the back, then grabbed his shoulders and kneed him in the stomach, causing a mass of blood to pour out of the Sand Nin's mouth. Hikoma then jumped up a little bit, pulled her right knee up to her chest and proceeded to kick the Sand Nin with the sole of her foot right where the shuriken was still lodged. The result was a sickening crunch as the shuriken made its way further into the body and the lifeless body of the Sand Nin fell onto the floor of the arena. Most of the other participants were shocked that Hikoma had actually killed her opponent. Nazashi on the other hand was pleasantly surprised that at least some villages had ninjas that weren't afraid to kill. Winner. Hikoma of the Cloud, said Guy. The 8th and final match. Tenten vs. Hyuga Hinata, announced Guy. Kakashi walked over to Tenten and told her it was her turn. She nodded slightly and went down into the arena where Hinata waited. As the 2 fighters stood there facing each other, anyone could clearly see that Tenten was not in a fighting mood. Shit. I shouldn't have told him until after this exam, regretted Kakashi. What the hell has her shaken up that bad? Wondered Hinata. Begin, yelled Guy. Hinata immediately rushed straight at Tenten. Tenten however seemed to recover a little and threw 3 shuriken at Hinata. Hinata dodged them and continued her charge. Tenten leapt sideways hoping to avoid Hinata's strikes, knowing that she stood no chance in hand-to-hand combat and would have to rely on her weapons. Hinata noticed that her opponent was simply dodging and trying to lengthen the distance between them, so she increased her speed and managed to catch up. She then instantly hit Tenten in her shoulders, thighs and arms, her hands becoming a blur to the observers. Wow. This isn't the Hinata I remember from 5 years ago, thought Nazashi. She's good. As fast, if not faster than Neji. Nazashi was impressed. Hinata decided to end it and for her final move, hit Tenten straight in the jaw, sending her flying halfway across the arena. Tenten tumbled on the ground for several seconds and then lost consciousness. Winner. Hyuga Hinata, yelled Guy. Good job, Hinata. A lot better than your fight with Neji, thought Nazashi. Damn, really, so much has changed around here. Congratulations to those of you who have passed this test, said Guy. The next part of the exam will take place a week from now, said a voice behind the participants. As Nazashi turned around, he saw the familiar face of a Junin, but could not remember his name. My name is Asuma, I will be the examiner for the third test. Oh yeah, him. He was Shikamaru's teacher. That's why I couldn't remember him. He's not smoking, thought Nazashi, slightly amused. The third test will also be one-on-one fights, but without rules. The fighters have already been randomly selected, said Asuma. They go as follows. Nara Shikamaru vs. Sumeto of the Mist, Hyuga Hinata vs. Hikoma of the Cloud, Kurono of the Snow vs. Minoto of the Sand, Nazashi of the Grass vs. Uchiha Sasuke. Nazashi grinned contently. Good, I get to see how much he has advanced, among other things. Sasuke was also pleased with the arrangement, a strong opponent to test my strength. As I said, you have a week to prepare. The next test will take place in the stadium. It will not be a public event, however some shinobi may come to watch. The Hokage will definitely be there and maybe another cage. Asuma talked and or babbled about the next test for about 15 minutes, most of which Nazashi tuned out and simply disappeared when they were dismissed. Several days later, Nazashi was sitting in his hotel room, contemplating the recent events, when suddenly a familiar voice kicked him out of his thoughts. Shouldn't you be starting the mission by now? It says. I know how much you're enjoying these reunions, but you do have a purpose here, Nazashi. Geez. Can't you say hello? Nazashi said in an irritated voice. Did you at least soundproof the room? Of course, I'm surprised you didn't notice. By the way, that was supposed to be my hello to you, said Itachi. So, about the mission, you really should start it. Have you seen that place? Cried Nazashi angrily. It's harder to get into than the Akatsuki headquarters. I can't even get within 50 yards without being spotted. God, how I wish I could just obliterate it to hell. Angrily replied Nazashi. Well, since you can't do that, then perhaps you need another way in, coolly said Itachi. Yay. I just don't know what yet, said Nazashi, calming down. I'm sure there will be an opportunity in the future. What makes you say that? Inquired Itachi. Instinct. Something is telling me to stay in the exam, a sort of wait for it, replied Nazashi. Telling you, or you just want to kill a few more leaf nin? Chuckled Itachi. My habits seem to be rubbing off on you. Hey, I only took care of a few liabilities. You would have done the same, I know you. Nazashi countered and Itachi just shrugged. And what about this kid you beat up using the Kyusho Dimmock? Asked Itachi. Lee is just going to be out for a couple of days, Nazashi half yelled. I didn't hit any of his pressure points that hard. Then remembering what Itachi said before the start of the mission, weren't you supposed to be outside the village? Nazashi asked. Yay, and you were supposed to start your mission. Itachi said sarcastically. Nazashi's head suddenly perked up. That reminds me, I'm going to be facing your foolish little brother in a few days. Want me to bring you a souvenir? Nazashi's eyes squinted in amusement. Itachi just smacked him upside the head. Idiot, you know the history. Yay, I know, said Nazashi while rubbing his head. Alright, I won't kill him, but I'll definitely have fun with him, Nazashi said in a sadistic tone. You want to use it, don't you? Itachi said coldly. What's wrong with having him have a little brush up with death? Asked Nazashi innocently. Itachi looked at him with a stare that said, you do anything funny and I'm gonna put you through so much torture you will be begging that I send you to hell. Ha ha ha. Don't worry so much, would I really kill the brother of my Oni-chan? Said Nazashi with a small nervous laugh. Itachi just gave him an "I'll be watching" look, and disappeared. Nazashi sighed as he felt the sound barrier decompose. Why is life always more of a bitch in this village, compared to anywhere else? Nazashi asked no one in particular. Yes, IDEFINETELY want to use IT on Sasuke, chuckled Nazashi demonically.